You know that old saying, over my dead body? It's the kind of thing you say when you are being stubborn, right? It is supposed to be a figure of speech. Well, for me it wasn't just a saying. It was the literal reality of my Tuesday afternoon. Except, there was one massive, glaring problem with the scenario playing out in my living room. I wasn't actually dead. I wasn't even close to dead. I was just incredibly tired, lying on the chaise lounge with a cold compress over my eyes, nursing a migraine that felt like a jackhammer was taking up residence in my frontal lobe. But to my two children Jason and Chloe who had rushed over to check on me, I might as well have been a corpse cooling on a slab. I had just taken my medication which usually knocks me out for a solid hour, and I think they assumed I was already in a deep chemical sleep. I wasn't. I was in that weird floaty state where your body feels heavy, but your hearing is sharper than a razor blade. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I could hear the neighbor's dog barking 3 streets over. And most clearly of all, I could hear the hushed, aggressive whispers of the 2 people I had birthed, raised, and loved more than life itself. I am telling you, Jason, the market is peaking right now, Chloe's voice hissed. It wasn't a whisper of concern. It was the sharp, calculating tone she used when she was trying to return a dress she had already worn to a party. If we list the place immediately after the funeral, we can get at least 800,000. Maybe 9 if we stage it right and get rid of all her dusty junk. My heart, which had been fluttering with anxiety earlier, suddenly went ice cold. They weren't talking about my health. They weren't discussing who would stay the night to make sure I didn't have another episode. They were discussing my real estate value. I don't want to wait for the sale, Chloe, Jason shot back, his voice impatient, the sound of his heavy boots pacing on my hardwood floors echoing in my ears. Probate takes forever. I need cash like yesterday. You take the house. I'll take the liquid assets and the jewelry. Mom has that vintage sapphire set in the safe. That alone is worth 50 grand. I can pawn that the same day. I lay there paralyzed. Not by the medicine but by pure, unadulterated shock. It felt like someone had poured cement into my veins. These were my babies. The boy I taught to ride a bike. The girl I stayed up with all night when she had the chicken pox. They were carving up my life's work like butchers with a carcass, and I wasn't even cold yet. Hey, before I tell you what Jason said next, because trust me, it gets way worse, I want to know who is hanging out with me today. Pause the video for a quick second. Drop a comment telling me what city you are watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing where everyone is connecting from. Okay, done. Let's get back to the betrayal. So, Jason is pacing, claiming my jewelry, and Chloe is mentally spending the money from my house. I wanted to sit up. I wanted to rip the cold compress off my eyes and scream at them. I wanted to ask them where I went wrong. But something stopped me. It was a gut instinct, a survival mechanism kicking in. If I woke up now, they would just backpedal. They would say they were stress planning, or that I had misunderstood. They would gaslight me just like they always did. Well, I needed to hear the whole plan. I needed to know exactly how deep the rot went. So I forced my breathing to stay shallow. I relaxed my jaw. I played dead. The sapphire set? Chloe scoffed, and I could hear the sound of her picking up one of my porcelain figurines and setting it back down roughly. You are an idiot if you think she still has that. She probably sold it to pay for the roof repairs last year. The old lady is losing her grip, Jason. Why do you think I've been pushing for power of attorney? Once we have that, we don't have to wait for her to kick the bucket. We can just move her into that facility on 4th Street and liquidate everything to pay for her care. Whatever is left over is ours. That facility on 4th Street. My blood ran cold. That place was notorious in our town. It was a warehouse for the elderly, a place that smelled of boiled cabbage and despair. We had driven past it once years ago and I had made them promise, never to put me in a place like that. She won't sign the power of attorney though, Jason grumbled. She's stubborn. She thinks she's still independent just because she can still drive that ancient car. She won't have a choice, Chloe said, her voice dropping to a sinister, conspiratorial level that made my skin crawl. I switched her pills, Jason. The ones she took today? I swapped the bottle cap with the sleepy ones. She's going to be out for hours. While she is groggy, we get her to sign the insurance updates. She never reads the fine print without her glasses, and I hid her glasses in the kitchen drawer. By the time she realizes what she signed, the house will be in my name and the accounts will be under your control. I felt a tear slide out from under the cold compress and trickle down into my ear. It was hot and stinging. This wasn't just greed anymore. This was malice. They were actively plotting to drug me, trick me, and strip me of my dignity just so they could get their hands on an inheritance a few years early. Fine, Jason said, sounding bored. But if she wakes up while we are doing this, I am leaving. I can't deal with her crying and the whole guilt trip thing she does. It's exhausting. She won't wake up, Chloe assured him. She's out cold. Look at her. Mouth open, totally gone. You have time. Let's go check the safe in the study. I want to see if the deed is actually in there or if she put it in a deposit box. I heard their footsteps retreat down the hallway toward my study. The floorboards creaked, then silence settled back over the living room. I waited. I counted to 50 in my head, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Then slowly I reached up and peeled the damp cloth off my face. I opened my eyes. The afternoon sun was streaming through the sheer curtains, casting long, beautiful shadows across the room my children couldn't wait to sell. I sat up. My head was spinning, likely from whatever cocktail Chloe had actually given me, but my mind was crystal clear. They thought I was the victim here. They thought I was the confused, helpless old woman who was just an obstacle between them and a payday. They had no idea. I wiped the tear from my cheek and looked at the photo of the three of us on the mantel taken 10 years ago. I stood up, grabbing the edge of the sofa for balance. I wasn't going to cry anymore. Tears were for mothers who were loved. I was apparently just a bank account with a pulse. I walked over to the window and looked out at my garden. I had nurtured those roses for 20 years. I had pruned them, watered them, and fought off pests. I knew exactly how to deal with parasites. I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. That would be too easy. They wanted to play games. They wanted to talk about wills and legacies. Fine. Tonight I was going to give them exactly what they asked for. I was going to make sure they got what they deserved. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking, not from fear but from a cold, hard rage. I wasn't calling the police. I was calling the one person Jason and Chloe feared more than anyone else in the world. My lawyer. I put the phone down on the side table just as I heard the floorboards creak in the hallway. They were coming back. I quickly laid back down, adjusting the cold compress that was now lukewarm and soggy against my forehead. My heart was still racing, but my mind was drifting back, way back, trying to pinpoint the exact moment I had turned my children into monsters. You don't just wake up one day and decide to rob your mother. That kind of entitlement is built brick by brick over decades. And the hardest pill to swallow wasn't the one Chloe had drugged me with. It was the realization that I was the architect of my own misery. It started after their father, relentless and hardworking, passed away when they were just 7 and 9. I was terrified. I was a single mother working as a paralegal by day and transcribing medical records by night. I was so afraid they would feel the gap of a missing parent, or the sting of our lower middle class budget, that I overcompensated. I didn't just smooth the road for them, I paved it in gold leaf. I remembered Jason at 16. He had taken my old sedan for a joyride without a license and smashed it into a neighbor's mailbox. A normal parent would have marched him down to the police station or at least made him work all summer to pay for the damages. What did I do? I told the neighbors I was driving. I took the points on my license. I paid the fine. I remember him hugging me, tears in his eyes, promising he would never do it again. But he didn't learn that actions have consequences. He learned that mommy fixes everything. That pattern repeated like a broken record. When Jason wanted to drop out of college to start a luxury sneaker resale business, I didn't tell him to finish his degree. I gave him $20,000 from my retirement fund for seed capital. He blew it all in 6 months on parties and a leased BMW to look the part. And when he came back broke, I made him his favorite meatloaf and told him the world just wasn't ready for his genius. And then there was Chloe. My beautiful, sharp-tongued Chloe. I looked at her baby pictures on the wall, feeling a surge of nausea. She had always wanted the best of everything, and I gave it to her because I didn't want her to feel less than the rich girls at her private school. I took on extra shifts so she could have the designer prom dress. I refinanced the house, the very house she was now trying to steal, to pay for a wedding that cost more than my annual salary. The marriage lasted 11 months. She kept the gifts, I kept the debt. I had created a vacuum where their gratitude should have been. They didn't see my sacrifices as love. They saw them as their birthright. They looked at me and didn't see a mother. They saw a vending machine that dispensed cash and forgiveness. And now that the machine was getting old and the buttons were sticking, they were trying to shake it until the last prize fell out. The footsteps stopped at the entryway of the living room. I forced my breathing to sound heavy and ragged, mimicking the deep sleep of the medicated. "She is still out," Jason whispered, his voice closer now. "Did you find the deed?" "No," Chloe snapped, and I could hear the frustration in her voice. "Just a bunch of old tax returns and photo albums. She must have moved it. She's getting paranoid in her old age. This is why we need the power of attorney, Jason. If we can't find the papers, we make new ones. We just need her signature." "I don't know, Chloe," Jason muttered. "What if she wakes up while we are holding the pen? It's risky." "Stop being such a coward," she hissed. "Do you want the money or not? Do you want to pay off that bookie, or do you want to lose your kneecaps? Because those are your options." My eyes widened behind the compress. "A bookie? So that is where the sneaker money went." It wasn't just entitlement. It was desperation. Jason was in trouble, and instead of coming to me for help, real help, he was ready to liquidate my life to save his own skin. "Hey," Jason said. "But we need to wake her up a little bit. Just enough to be groggy. If she is totally unconscious, her signature will look like a squiggle. We need her to be lucid enough to hold the pen." "Leave that to me," Chloe said. "I'll do the concerned daughter act. You just have the papers ready on the clipboard. Fold the top page over so she can't see the title. Tell her it's the insurance renewal for the roof. She was complaining about the leak last week." I felt the couch dip as Chloe sat down next to me. Her hand, smelling of expensive lotion, purchased with the birthday money I sent her last week, brushed the hair off my forehead. It was a gentle, loving touch which made it all the more horrifying. It was the touch of a predator soothing its prey before the bite. "Mom," she cooed softly. "Mommy? Wake up, sweetie." I let out a groan, a slow, guttural sound of someone fighting through a chemical fog. I shifted my weight, letting the cold compress slide off my face onto the floor with a wet plop. I blinked my eyes open, keeping them half-lidded and unfocused. "Chloe." I slurred, channeling every ounce of exhaustion I had felt over the last 30 years. What time is it?" "It's just past 3, Mom," she said, her face swimming into view. She was wearing her sympathetic expression, the one she used when she needed alone. "You had a really bad migraine. We were so worried. You've been asleep for a while." "Pie head," I muttered, reaching up to rub my temples. "It feels heavy." "I know, Mom," Jason chimed in, stepping into my line of sight. He was holding a clipboard against his chest, his knuckles white. "You took the strong meds. But listen, before you drift off again, there is a guy here from the insurance company. Well, he just left, actually. But he needs this form signed for the roof repair. Remember the leak in the guest room?" I looked at Jason. He was sweating. A bead of perspiration rolled down his temple. He was a terrible liar. But Chloe was a master. She smoothed my blanket. "It's just a renewal, Mom," she said soothingly. "But if we don't sign it by 5 today, the coverage lapses. And with the storm season coming, we don't want you to worry about leaks, do we?" I looked at the clipboard. I looked at my children. They were playing the part of the dutiful caretakers so well. If I hadn't heard them 10 minutes ago, I would have signed it. I would have thanked them for taking care of the boring paperwork for me. "I can't see," I whispered, squinting. "Where are my glasses?" "Oh, don't worry about reading it, Mom," Chloe said quickly, sliding a pen into my hand. "I read it over for you. Standard stuff. Just sign right there at the X and you can go back to sleep. We'll handle everything." I held the pen. The tip hovered over the paper. They held their breath. The silence in the room was deafening. The pen hovered there, a cheap blue ballpoint that Jason had probably fished out of his car's glove compartment. I watched the tip tremble against the paper. They were staring at it like it was a bomb defusal wire. All I had to do was scribble Evelyn Vance, and their financial problems would vanish, replaced by my permanent nightmare. But I didn't sign. Instead, I let my hand go completely limp. It wasn't hard. The anger coursing through me was actually making me feel physically weak. The pen slipped from my fingers, bounced off the clipboard with a sharp clack, and rolled under the sofa. "Oops," I mumbled, letting my head loll back against the cushion. "My fingers. They feel like sausages. I can't feel the tips." "Oh, for God's sake," Jason snapped, his patience shattering instantly. He threw his hands up, the clipboard smacking against his chest. She dropped it. Chloe, she dropped the damn pen. Keep your voice down. Chloe hissed at him, then turned back to me with that sickeningly sweet smile plastered on her face, though it was straining at the edges now. It's okay, Mom. Accidents happen. Jason, get the pen. I'm not crawling on the floor, Jason grumbled, but he got down on his knees anyway, groping under the dust ruffle of my sofa. I'm so tired, I whispered, closing my eyes again. Can we do this next week? The roof isn't going to fly away today. No, they both shouted in unison. Jason popped his head up, red-faced. Mom, the insurance adjuster said it has to be today. Look, you're obviously not feeling well. You're clumsy. You're forgetting things. You're mixing up your days. Here it came. The pivot. They realized they couldn't just bully me into signing. They had to break my confidence first. They had to make me believe I was incapable of running my own life. I'm not mixing up days, I said, adding a tremor to my voice. It's Tuesday. It's Wednesday, Mom, Chloe lied effortlessly. See? This is what we've been talking about. You're losing track. You're alone in this big empty house, and honestly, it's becoming dangerous. What if you fall? What if you leave the stove on again? I had never left the stove on in my life. The only time the smoke detector went off was when Jason tried to make grilled cheese 3 Christmases ago and fell asleep on the couch. I'm fine, I said, pulling the blanket tighter around me. I just have a headache. It's not just a headache, Mom, Chloe said, her voice taking on a stern, I know what's best for you tone. Jason and I have been talking. We're really worried about you staying here. The maintenance, the stairs. It's too much for a woman your age. And honestly, watching you struggle to even hold a pen? It's heartbreaking. I wanted to laugh. Heartbreaking? The only thing breaking in this room was their moral compass. We found a place, Jason said, standing up and brushing dust off his knees. He abandoned the search for the pen, sensing the strategy shift. It's called Oakwood Meadows. It's on 4th Street. It's really nice, Mom. Like a resort. A resort, I repeated flatly. Yeah, Jason continued, gaining momentum. They have bingo nights and, Jell-O cups. And round-the-clock care. You wouldn't have to worry about the roof or the garden or anything. You'd have your own room. Well, you'd share with a roommate, but that's good for socialization. You're too isolated here. I knew Oakwood Meadows. Remember I told you we drove past it? It wasn't a resort. It was a holding pen with fluorescent lighting and a staff-to-patient ratio that should be illegal. The garden was a patch of astroturf in the parking lot. I don't want to leave my home, I said, letting a tear leak out. Your father built the deck out back. My roses are here. The roses are dead, Mom. Chloe snapped, dropping the act for a split second. God, you are so attached to things that don't matter. Look, we're not asking. We're telling you because we love you. We can't watch you deteriorate like this. We're going to help you pack a bag tomorrow. Once you're settled at Oakwood, we can handle the house. We'll sell it and the money will go towards your premium care. Premium care, Jason snorted under his breath, looking at his phone. Probably checking the odds on the game he was betting my money on. So here is the plan, Chloe said, standing up and smoothing her skirt. She realized the signature wasn't happening right this second, so she moved to the long game. You rest today. Sleep off whatever confusion you're having. Tomorrow morning I'm coming back with a notary and the admissions paperwork for Oakwood. We'll get the power of attorney signed then when you're feeling better. But Mom, this is happening. You can't stay here. She leaned down, her face inches from mine. Her eyes were cold, devoid of any daughterly warmth. Don't fight us on this. If you make us go to court to declare you incompetent, we will. And then you'll end up in a state facility, not the nice one we picked out. Do you understand? I nodded slowly, letting my chin tremble. Okay, I whispered. I understand. Good, Chloe said, straightening up. He looked at Jason. Let's go. He's useless right now. We'll come back at 9 a.m. sharp. And Jason, check the kitchen for any more of those pills. We might need to help her rest again tonight. Way ahead of you, Jason said, patting his jacket pocket. I heard the rattle of my pill bottle. He had stolen my migraine medication. They walked to the door, their footsteps heavy and confident. They were talking loudly now, not even bothering to whisper. I'll call the realtor tonight, I heard Chloe say as they opened the front door. Tell them to prep the listing. Charming vintage home, motivated sellers. We need a quick close. And I'll call the guy, Jason said. Tell him I'll have the cash by Friday. The door slammed shut. The lock clicked. The sound of their car engine roared to life, then faded down the street. I lay there for a full minute listening to the silence of the house. The big, empty, dangerous house that was my sanctuary. They thought they had won. They thought they had broken me. They thought they had until tomorrow morning to finalize their coup. I threw the blanket off and sat up. The dizziness was gone, replaced by a surge of adrenaline that felt like lightning in my veins. Motivated sellers, I said to the empty room, my voice steady and hard. I stood up and walked to the window, watching the dust settle where their car had been. They were right about one thing. Everything was going to change tomorrow. But they were wrong about who was going to be crying. I checked my watch. It was 4:15 p.m. My lawyer's office closed at 6 o'clock. I grabbed my keys from the hook where I'd hidden them inside a winter coat, because I knew Chloe checked the key bowl, and headed for the garage. I wasn't going to wait for them to come back with a notary. I was going to rewrite history before they even woke up. I drove my 2008 sedan like I was qualifying for the Indy 500. For a car that Jason had called ancient and embarrassing, it handled the sharp turns of the highway on-ramp with surprising grace. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white, but for the first time all day I didn't feel the throbbing of a migraine. I felt the cold, hard clarity of a woman on a mission. I wasn't driving to a bingo night or a pharmacy. I was driving to dismantle my children's future before they could dismantle mine. My lawyer, Arthur, has an office downtown in one of those brick buildings that smells like old coffee and mahogany. He's been with me since the divorce, helping me navigate the mess my ex-husband left behind. Arthur is the kind of guy who wears suspenders not because it's a fashion statement, but because he doesn't trust belts to do the job. I had called him from the car, screaming over the Bluetooth that it was an emergency. To his credit, he didn't ask questions. He just said, "The back door is open, Evelyn. I'll put the kettle on." When I walked into his office, I didn't look like the frail, confused old woman Chloe had mocked an hour ago. I marched in, slammed my purse on his desk, and sat down before he could even offer me a seat. "Evelyn," Arthur said, peering over his spectacles, a concerned frown deepening the lines on his forehead. "You sounded like you were being chased by the mob. What on earth is going on?" "Worse than the mob, Arthur," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and adrenaline. "My children. They are planning to put me in Oakwood Meadows tomorrow morning. Against my will. And they are going to liquidate everything I own to pay for it, and to pay off Jason's gambling debts." Arthur's pen froze in midair. He knew my kids. He had sent them graduation cards. He had drafted the original will that left them everything 50/50ths. Oakwood Meadows? That place has been cited by the state 3 times this year alone. "Evelyn, are you sure? Maybe it was a misunderstanding." "I heard them, Arthur," I snapped. "I heard them while I was pretending to be asleep because Chloe drugged my tea. They talked about selling the house immediately. They talked about pawning the sapphire necklace. Jason needs 50 grand by Friday for a bookie. They aren't waiting for me to die anymore. They're rushing the process." I saw the shift in Arthur's eyes. The lawyer mode kicked in. The shock evaporated, replaced by the sharp, predatory focus of a man who knows the law is a weapon best served cold. He pulled a fresh yellow legal pad toward him. "Okay," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "What do you want to do? We can file a restraining order. We can preemptively block the power of attorney." "No," I said, leaning forward. "I don't want a shield, Arthur. I want a sword. If I block them, they'll just keep coming. They'll try to declare me incompetent. They'll drag this out. I want to end it. Tonight. I want to restructure everything so that even if they drag me to court, there is nothing for them to take." We spent the next 2 hours performing emergency surgery on my estate. It was brutal. Every signature felt like I was cutting a cord that had connected me to them since birth. But then I would remember Chloe's voice saying, "The roses are dead, Mom," and I would sign my name with a flourish. Here's what we did. First, the house. The house that Chloe was mentally decorating for a quick sale. We transferred the deed immediately into an irrevocable living trust. I named myself the primary beneficiary for my lifetime, meaning I could live there until I was 102 and no one could kick me out. Not Jason, not Chloe, not a judge. It was ironclad. "And upon your passing?" Arthur asked, hovering his pen over the beneficiary line. Or if you are incapacitated? The Safe Haven for Senior Pets charity, I said without hesitation. Chloe is allergic to cats. Let's see her try to flip a house that is legally designated to become a cat sanctuary. Arthur actually cracked a smile at that. Done. Now the liquid assets. The savings, the retirement accounts, the bonds. Jason wants cash, I mused, thinking of his sweating face and the bookie threat. He thinks there is a pot of gold waiting for him. We can lock it up, Arthur suggested. An annuity? A drip feed? No, I said, a cold idea forming in my mind. Liquidate it. All of it. Move it into the trust, but I want to withdraw a specific amount in cash right now. I know you have a safe here, Arthur. I need to prepare a gift for them. Arthur looked at me confused. You want to give them money? Oh, I'm going to give them exactly what they asked for, I said, a bitter taste in my mouth. They wanted an early inheritance. They wanted to divide my assets. I'm going to give them their share tonight. I want you to draft a document, a settlement of estate agreement. It states that by accepting the gift I give them tonight, they waive all future claims to my estate. Make it sound fancy. Make it look like they are winning. And if they sign it? Arthur asked. Then they get the gift, I said. And once they open it, they'll realize exactly what they've done. But by then the house will be in the trust and the money will be gone. This is the nuclear option, Evelyn, Arthur warned, looking at the stack of papers. Once we file these electronically, which I am doing right now, there is no going back. You are effectively disinheriting your children unless they survive you by 20 years and behave like saints, which the trust stipulates they won't. I thought about Jason refusing to pick up the pen. I thought about Chloe stealing my medication. I thought about the loneliness I felt in my own living room while they carved me up like a turkey. Push the button, Arthur, I said softly. He hit enter on his keyboard. A printer whirred to life in the corner. It was done. My legacy was no longer theirs to steal. It was mine to protect. I stood up, my legs feeling a little shaky but my spirit soaring. One last thing, I said, checking my watch. It was almost 7 p.m. I need you to notarize the new will and the trust documents right now. And then I need you to go home. I have a dinner to cook. You're cooking for them? Arthur asked aghast. Oh yes, I said, picking up my purse. I'm inviting them over for a celebratory dinner. I'm going to tell them I've made a decision about the house and the money. I'm going to tell them I'm ready to sign everything over. Arthur looked at me with a mix of fear and admiration. You are a terrifying woman, Evelyn Vance. I'm a mother, Arthur, I said, walking to the door. We're only terrifying when we have to be. And tonight, I'm going to be their worst nightmare. I walked out into the cool evening air. The street lights were flickering on. I had the new legal documents tucked safely in my bag, right next to the gift I had prepared. I got into my car and dialed Jason's number. Hello? He answered on the first ring, sounding eager. Jason, I said, forcing my voice to sound weak and defeated. Call your sister. Come back to the house. But I don't want to fight anymore. I've made a decision. Let's settle this tonight. We're on our way, he said, and I could hear the greed dripping from his voice. He hung up before I could say goodbye. I started the engine. The final act was about to begin. The smell of meatloaf and caramelized onions filled the kitchen. Jason's absolute favorite comfort food. It was the same meal I made him when he scraped his knee in 3rd grade, and the same meal I made when he crashed his car at 16. It was the smell of forgiveness. Or at least that's what I wanted them to think. In reality, as I pulled the roasting pan out of the oven, the scent just reminded me of how many times I had tried to buy their love with food, money, and silence. Not tonight. Tonight the meatloaf was just a prop. I heard the front door unlock. They didn't even knock. Why would they? In their minds they already owned the place. Mom. Chloe's voice floated down the hallway, sounding chirpy and fake like a daytime talk show host. We're here. And we brought wine. In the kitchen, I called back, setting the heavy pan on the trivet. They appeared in the doorway, looking flushed and eager. Jason's eyes darted immediately to the counter, scanning for paperwork, while Chloe busied herself pouring 3 glasses of cheap Merlot she'd probably picked up at the gas station. It smells amazing, Mom, Jason said, though he didn't look at me. He was tapping his foot, a nervous tic he'd had since childhood. So, you said on the phone you made a decision? About the, transition? Sit down, I said, gesturing to the table. Let's eat first. We can't do business on an empty stomach. They exchanged a look, a mix of annoyance and greed, but they sat. For 20 minutes, we played the most excruciating game of happy family in history. Chloe talked about her Pilates class. Jason complained about the traffic. I nodded and smiled, cutting my meatloaf into tiny, precise squares, watching them shovel food into their mouths. They were rushing. They wanted to get to the dessert, which they assumed was my bank account. Finally, Jason dropped his fork. It clattered loudly against the china. Hey Mom. The food is great. But it's getting late. You said you wanted to settle things. I wiped my mouth with a napkin, took a slow sip of water and reached under the placemat. I pulled out the blue folder Arthur had prepared. The atmosphere in the room instantly shifted. It went from dinner to a Shark Tank. I did, I said, my voice steady. I thought about what you said. About me being confused. About the house being too much work. It's for your own good, Chloe added quickly, leaning forward, her eyes locked on the folder. Exactly, I said. So, I've decided to simplify my estate. I don't want you two fighting over who gets what when I'm gone. While I'm here. So, I had my lawyer draft this. I opened the folder and slid 2 crisp documents across the table, one to each of them. This is a voluntary settlement of inheritance, I explained, using the fancy legal jargon Arthur had coached me on. It's very simple. It states that you two agree to accept a one-time immediate cash gift tonight. In exchange for this cash, you waive all future rights to my estate, including the house, the car, and any other assets. You take the money now, and the rest of my estate is mine to do with as I please until I die. Jason grabbed the paper, his eyes scanning it greedily. Immediate cash? He asked, licking his lips. How much? The full liquidated value of my personal investment accounts, I lied smoothly. Everything in the safe. Everything I could pull out today. Chloe looked at Jason, doing the mental math. The house is worth more long-term, she whispered to him. But the market is shaky. I need the cash, Chloe, Jason hissed back, ignoring her. He looked at me. If we sign this, we get the money tonight. No waiting for probate. Tonight, I promised. I have the checks in my purse right now. That was all they needed to hear. They didn't read the fine print. They didn't ask about the specific amount. They just saw a shortcut to a payday. Jason grabbed a pen from his pocket, the same one he had refused to pick up off the floor earlier, and scribbled his name. Chloe, afraid of missing out, snatched the pen and signed hers too. Done, Jason said, sliding the papers back to me with a triumphant grin. So, where is it? I picked up the signed documents, checked the signatures and carefully placed them back in the folder. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out 2 white envelopes. Here you go, I said softly. Don't spend it all in one place. They tore into the envelopes like wild animals. Jason ripped his open so hard the paper tore in half. He pulled out the check. Silence. Total, suffocating silence. Jason stared at the check. Then he flipped it over. Then he looked at me, his face going from red to a pale, sickly gray. Mom, he choked out. Is this a joke? What is it? Chloe asked, pulling her check out. She looked at it and gasped. $312? Mom, what the hell is this? That, I said, leaning back in my chair and crossing my arms, is the full value of your personal investment accounts. It's the balance of the savings accounts I opened for you when you were 12. I liquidated them this afternoon. No. Jason slammed his fist on the table, making the wine glasses jump. You said the safe. The sapphire set. The bonds. Oh, those. I smiled, a cold, sharp smile that reached my eyes for the first time that day. I moved those into a trust. Specifically, the Evelyn Vance Irrevocable Trust. Along with the house. The house. Chloe screeched, standing up. You can't put the house in a trust. We just signed. You just signed a waiver, I interrupted, my voice hard as steel. You signed a legal document stating you accept that $300 as your full and final inheritance. You waived your rights to the house. You waived your rights to the jewelry. You waived your rights to everything. I'll sue you, Jason shouted, stepping toward me. I'll tell the judge you tricked us. You're senile. Go ahead, I challenged him. Call my lawyer. He has the audio recording of this dinner. He heard you say you wanted the immediate cash. He heard you rush to sign. And he also has the deed to the house, which is now legally the future property of the safe haven for senior pets. When I die, this house becomes a cat sanctuary. Chloe, I know how much you hate cats. Jason looked like he was going to be sick. No, it's the bookie. If I don't have 50 grand by Friday, then I guess you should have learned to budget better, I said, standing up. I felt 10 feet tall. Or maybe you can ask Chloe for a loan. Oh wait, she signed her inheritance away too. You can't do this, Chloe was crying now, black mascara running down her cheeks. We're your children. We love you. No, I said, walking to the front door and opening it wide. The cool night air rushed in, cleansing the house of the smell of meatloaf and lies. You love my money. And frankly, I think the money will be happier with the cats. Get out, I said. Mom. Get out. I screamed, a roar that had been building in my chest for 20 years. They scrambled. They grabbed their jackets and ran out the door like the cowards they were. They didn't look back. They got into their car and peeled away, leaving nothing behind but tire marks and silence. I locked the door. I threw the bolt. Then I went back to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of that cheap wine and sat down. I was alone. Finally, wonderfully alone. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't worried about my will. I was just ready to start living. That is the end of the story. Karma is a dish best served, well, with a side of meatloaf. If you enjoyed seeing Evelyn take her power back, please smash that like button right now. And hey, if you made it this far, comment Cat Sanctuary down below so I know you are a true legend who watched until the end. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about family drama and instant karma. See you in the next video.